Nobody wants to say it, but as people age, they develop habits that drive everyone around them crazy. The worst part? They don't even realize it. Aging changes people in ways they never expect. It's not just about wrinkles, gray hair, or slower movements. It's about the little behaviors that slowly creep in over time. The blunt comments, the endless storytelling, the stubborn refusal to embrace new technology. These habits become part of their personality, often without them even noticing. If you've ever spent time with elderly relatives, you've probably seen it firsthand. The same story told for the 10th time in a single afternoon. The sudden lack of patience in a grocery store line. The dismissive attitude toward anything new or different. At first, these quirks might seem harmless, even endearing. But over time, they start to wear on the people around them. And here's the scary part. If you're not careful, you might end up doing them too. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become the grumpy, out-of-touch elder in the family. It happens gradually. A shift in mindset, a loss of awareness, a growing frustration with the modern world. Before they know it, they've become the person they once found difficult to be around. And the cycle continues. But what if you could see it coming? What if you could recognize these behaviors before they take hold and consciously avoid them? That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. In this video, we're breaking down 12 unpleasant things that elderly people do as they age that no one likes telling them. Some of these might surprise you, some might make you laugh, and some might make you a little uncomfortable, because you might already see these habits forming in yourself or your loved ones. This isn't about blaming or shaming. It's about awareness. If we understand why these behaviors develop, we can address them before they become ingrained. And if you have elderly parents, grandparents, or friends, this will help you navigate these changes with patience and understanding. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll not only recognize these behaviors, you'll know exactly how to avoid them as you get older. And trust me, your future self and everyone around you will thank you for it. Now, let's get into it. Number 1 is unfiltered opinions. You might have heard an elderly relative say something so blunt that it made the entire room go silent. Maybe it was an unfiltered comment about someone's weight, a brutally honest take on a family member's life choices, or even an outdated opinion that made everyone cringe. As people age, they often stop holding back their thoughts, sometimes brutally. And the worst part, they don't see anything wrong with it. So, why does this happen? One major reason is the loss of social inhibitions. As we get older, the brain undergoes changes that can make it harder to filter thoughts before speaking. The prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate impulse control and social behavior, naturally declines with age. This means that the social filter people spent a lifetime developing starts to weaken, leading to more unfiltered and often tactless remarks. Another factor is a shift in priorities. Many elderly people simply stop caring about what others think. After decades of navigating social norms, they reach a stage where they value honesty over politeness. They might feel they've earned the right to say whatever is on their mind without sugarcoating it. To them, they're just telling it like it is. But while they might feel liberated by this newfound bluntness, it can have unintended consequences for the people around them. For family members and friends, hearing brutally honest opinions can be embarrassing, frustrating, or even hurtful. Imagine bringing a new partner to a family gathering only to have your elderly relative blurt out something like, "You could do better," or "You've put on some weight, haven't you?" These remarks may not be meant as insults, but they can still sting. The worst part is that confronting an elderly person about their bluntness often doesn't work. Many will double down, insisting they're just being honest, or that people today are too sensitive. Others may not even realize they've said something offensive. So how do you handle it? One approach is to gently redirect the conversation. If they make a harsh comment, acknowledge it with a light-hearted response and quickly move on to another topic. If the remark is particularly offensive, addressing it calmly and privately may be the best approach. Saying something like, "I know you didn't mean it that way, but that comment could really hurt someone's feelings," can sometimes make them more aware of their words. If you're the one aging, it's important to be mindful of this tendency. Self-awareness is key. Just because you think something doesn't mean it needs to be said out loud, especially if it might hurt someone else. Aging doesn't have to mean losing social grace. The difference between being refreshingly honest and unintentionally rude is knowing when to filter thoughts, even when that filter starts to fade. The second one is repeating the same stories. Have you ever sat through a story from an elderly relative, nodding along, only to realize halfway through that you've heard it a dozen times before? Maybe it's the time they met a celebrity, the big game they won in high school, or that one vacation mishap they never let go of. At first, it's charming, hearing about the past, learning about their experiences. But when the same story starts playing on an endless loop, it can become frustrating. Repetition can also be a coping mechanism for those who feel a loss of control or significance. As people age, their world often shrinks. They retire from work, their children grow up, and their social circles become smaller. Retelling stories allows them to hold on to moments when they felt important, accomplished, or valued. It's their way of keeping the conversation going, especially when they feel they don't have as many new experiences to share. Number 3 is their resistance to new technology. We've all noticed when an elderly person's staring at their smartphone, frustrated, jabbing at the screen like it personally offended them. Or maybe they flat out refuse to use modern technology altogether, insisting that things were better before. Whether it's struggling with apps, refusing to use online banking, or getting overwhelmed by simple digital tasks, many older adults resist new technology. But why does this happen? One major reason is fear of change. Technology evolves at an incredibly fast pace, and for those who didn't grow up with it, the learning curve can feel overwhelming. What seems intuitive to younger generations, like navigating a touchscreen or sending a voice note, can feel like an entirely new language to someone who spent most of their life using landlines, handwritten notes, and in-person transactions. Lack of exposure is another big factor. Many elderly people never needed to adapt to technology for work or daily life. They managed just fine for decades without smartphones, social media, or online services, so they don't see why they should change now. To them, the benefits don't always seem worth the effort of learning something new. Cognitive decline also plays a role. Learning new skills requires memory, problem-solving, and adaptability, all of which can decline with age. For someone already struggling with recall or attention, following multi-step processes, like setting up a new phone or learning how to use an app, can be exhausting and discouraging. But here's the irony. Despite resisting technology, many elderly people end up relying on younger family members to manage it for them. They may refuse to learn how to book appointments online, but expect their children or grandchildren to do it for them. They might avoid setting up a new TV or Wi-Fi router, assuming a younger relative will take care of it. While some of this is understandable, it can also become frustrating for those constantly tasked with fixing their tech issues. Number 4 is ignoring personal hygiene. It's a difficult subject to talk about, but many elderly individuals start to neglect their personal hygiene. You might notice a grandparent wearing the same clothes for days, skipping showers, or forgetting to brush their teeth. At first, family members may dismiss it as a minor issue, but over time, it can become a real problem, both for their health and their social relationships. One of the biggest reasons is physical difficulty. As people age, everyday tasks that once seemed simple, like standing in the shower, brushing their hair, or clipping their nails, can become exhausting or even painful. Arthritis makes gripping a toothbrush harder, mobility issues make bathing feel like a chore, and bending down to trim toenails might not even be an option. Forgetfulness is another major factor. Conditions like dementia or mild cognitive decline can make people lose track of their hygiene routine. They may not remember when they last bathed or changed their clothes, and without a structured schedule, these habits can slowly slip away. In some cases, depression plays a significant role. Many elderly individuals face loneliness, grief, or a loss of purpose after retirement. When mental health declines, self-care often follows. Someone who once took pride in their appearance might stop showering, grooming, or caring about how they look because they feel like it doesn't matter anymore. While hygiene neglect often starts subtly, it has real social consequences. The fifth one is overuse of outdated phrases or jokes. It's happened to almost everyone. You're sitting with an elderly relative when they suddenly drop a phrase or joke that makes the whole room go silent. Maybe they use a term that's long been considered offensive, or they crack a joke that might have been funny 50 years ago, but now just feels cringeworthy. The awkwardness hangs in the air, but no one corrects them because, well, they're old. The sixth one on the list is their extreme stubbornness. If you've ever tried to convince an elderly relative to see things from a new perspective, you know how difficult it can be. Whether it's their views on politics, health, or even the right way to do things, many older adults seem completely unwilling to change their minds, even when presented with clear evidence. It's as if their opinions are set in stone, and any challenge to their beliefs only makes them dig in deeper. One of the biggest reasons is psychological rigidity. As people age, their brains become less flexible in processing new information. Studies show that older adults often have a harder time updating their beliefs, even when confronted with new facts. This isn't necessarily a conscious choice, it's just how the brain works over time. There's also the issue of identity and experience. By the time someone reaches old age, they've spent decades forming their worldview. Their opinions are shaped by personal experiences, cultural influences, and the time period they grew up in. Changing their beliefs can feel like admitting they were wrong all along, which can be unsettling and even threatening to their sense of self. Additionally, some older adults see their stubbornness as wisdom. They've lived through so much, made mistakes, learned lessons, and believe they have the benefit of experience. When younger people try to correct them, they might see it as naive or disrespectful. After all, they've been there, done that. Number 8 is becoming overly frugal. We've all seen it. An elderly relative carefully washing and reusing plastic bags, holding onto a broken appliance long past its usefulness, or refusing to replace a pair of shoes that are falling apart. At first, it might seem like good old-fashioned thriftiness, but in some cases, extreme frugality can go too far, leading to unnecessary hardship. One major reason is fear of financial insecurity. Many elderly people worry about running out of money, even when they have a comfortable savings account or pension. The uncertainty of medical expenses, rising costs of living, and the reality that they're no longer earning an income can make them feel like they need to stretch every dollar, just in case. The ninth one is oversharing about health issues. You sit down for a nice family dinner, ready to enjoy a meal, when suddenly an elderly relative starts describing their latest doctor's visit in graphic detail. Before you even take your first bite, you've heard all about their digestive issues, aching joints, and that suspicious rash they can't seem to get rid of. It's an awkward situation that many people have experienced, but why do elderly individuals do this so often? One of the biggest reasons is that health becomes a major focus as people age. When you're younger, conversations might revolve around work, travel, or hobbies. But for many elderly people, their world starts to shrink, and their health becomes one of the most dominant aspects of their daily life. Between doctor's appointments, medications, and new aches and pains, their personal health concerns become a major talking point simply because it's what's on their mind most of the time. Number 10 is how they act entitled in public spaces. We've all seen it. an elderly person cutting in line at the grocery store, demanding special treatment at a restaurant, or speaking loudly on the phone in a quiet waiting room. Sometimes their behavior comes across as impatience, and other times it feels like outright entitlement. But what causes this shift in social behavior, and why does it happen so often with age? One major reason is a strong sense of seniority. Many elderly individuals feel that their age alone entitles them to certain privileges. After all, they've spent decades working, raising families, and contributing to society. They may believe that younger generations should naturally show them respect, whether it's letting them cut in line, giving up a seat, or tolerating their demands. The second to last is how they become overly suspicious. Have you ever had an elderly relative insist that their phone is being tapped, that the government is hiding something, or that every unknown number calling them is part of a scam? Many older adults develop a heightened sense of suspicion, sometimes to the point where they distrust even family members, neighbors, or well-meaning professionals. And then the last, which is the most common, is they're living in the past. We've all heard it before, an elderly relative sighing and saying, "Back in my day, things were better." Whether they're talking about music, manners, prices, or the way people used to dress, there's a tendency for older generations to romanticize the past while criticizing the present. While nostalgia is natural, constantly living in the past can create a disconnect between older and younger generations. One of the biggest reasons is nostalgia bias. As people age, they tend to remember the good moments of their youth more vividly while forgetting the struggles, hardships, and inconveniences that came with them. The brain has a way of filtering memories to highlight the positive, which is why the past often seems simpler, happier, and better than it actually was. There's also a deep discomfort with modern changes. The world moves at an incredibly fast pace. Technology evolves, social norms shift, and the way people interact changes drastically. For many elderly individuals, these changes can feel overwhelming or even alienating. Instead of trying to adapt, they retreat into the past, where they felt more confident and in control. Another factor is a sense of loss. Aging comes with significant life changes, retirement, losing loved ones, declining health. Many older adults cling to the past because it reminds them of a time when they felt stronger, more independent, and more valued. Talking about the good old days can be a way to cope with the emotional challenges of aging, but while reminiscing can be enjoyable for them, it can have unintended consequences for those around them. When older individuals constantly talk about how much better things used to be, younger people may feel dismissed or invalidated. If every conversation turns into a lecture about how today's generation is too soft, too distracted, or doesn't work as hard, it can create resentment and emotional distance. Instead of engaging in meaningful conversations, younger family members may start tuning out or avoiding certain topics altogether. Aging is inevitable, but becoming that elderly person isn't. The truth is, most of these habits creep in so gradually that people don't even realize they're doing them. A little extra stubbornness here, a repeated story there, and before you know it, you're the one frustrating your family without meaning to. But the good news: awareness is key. The habits we've talked about aren't just quirks of old age. They're patterns that develop when people stop paying attention to how they interact with the world. And while some of these behaviors are understandable, they can also push people away. Whether it's refusing to adapt to new technology, oversharing about medical issues, or constantly reminiscing about the past, these habits can make younger generations feel disconnected, frustrated, or even avoid interactions altogether. But it doesn't have to be that way. The best kind of aging is the kind that keeps relationships strong, keeps the mind open, and allows for growth even in later years. And that starts with recognizing these behaviors early, not just in others, but in ourselves. So here's the big question: which one of these have you noticed in your own family? Maybe it's your grandparent who refuses to trust online banking, or an elderly uncle who always interrupts with the same old stories. Or maybe, just maybe, you've caught yourself doing one or two of these things already. Let me know in the comments. And if you're wondering, how do I make sure I don't end up like this? Don't worry, we've got you covered. In our next video, we'll be diving into how to age without annoying everyone around you. We'll talk about the habits to build now that will keep you sharp, self-aware, and socially connected as you get older. Trust me, your future self and your loved ones will thank you for it. So, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. And if you found this video helpful or painfully relatable, give it a like. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.